Okay, so dukkha is this sense of dis-ease, this sense of unease, this sense of lack of satisfaction, which runs through all our lives, and which creates this dichotomy between hope that everything will go okay, and the fear or anxiety, the worry that it won't go okay, because of our very limited ideas of what is happiness and what is suffering, which is based on our ego, and it's nothing to do with our genuine happiness, which does not depend on other people or external circumstances. Genuine happiness is an inner sense of clarity and joy, which is not dependent on anything, and is our genuine nature. We'll deal with that later. But in the meantime, as long as our lives are lived by our ego, by our sense of me, then it's very much concerned with bringing pleasure and happiness and satisfaction to me and mine, and avoiding anything which appears to be a source of problems for me and mine. And so this gives rise to all our worries and anxieties and so forth, because it's dealing with something which is, by its very nature, unattainable. Everlasting bliss for the ego is simply not happening. It cannot. The ego is the problem. So, but anyway, so dukkha doesn't just mean suffering. It can be very subtle. Even in the midst of pleasure, there is pain waiting in the wings. I mean, even for a very simple example, if you're eating very delicious food and they're having a wonderful meal, but then if you have to immediately start eating that meal all over again, and then eating that meal all over again, even the most delicious food turns into suffering. Right? I mean, so even something which we consider to be extremely pleasurable, if it continues, would not be pleasurable, would be, again, a source of pain. And so, not just in a very obvious way, but in the quite subtle ways, people who just spend their time because of their money and their lack of responsibility, just trying to keep themselves looking beautiful and having pleasure after pleasure after pleasure, end up totally despairing. I mean, that doesn't work. How meaningless can it be? Just to endlessly be going from, pleasurable situation to pleasurable situation and nothing behind that. Because however many facelifts we have, we're all going to get old. And, if that is a problem, then it's a problem. If it's not a problem, then getting old is natural. What's wrong with getting old? Getting old is not the problem. The problem is our resistance to getting old, and so forth. So this question of dukkha is the fact that we are not at peace with what is, and we resist it. And the ego wants to design things the way the ego wants it to go. And when the ego doesn't get what it wants, then it suffers. So the suffering isn't really out there. The suffering is our resistance inside, which is shown by the second noble truth. The first noble truth is the truth of dukkha. Second noble truth is the cause of dukkha. Now the cause of dukkha is this double. It is craving based on ignorance. That's the problem. What does it mean? Our essential ignorance from a Buddhist perspective is that we solidify and reify phenomena. In other words, we make things appear to be solid, real, unchanging, and just the way we see them. And because of that, we either grasp or reject. But in that, the most important thing which we reify means we make into a thing, that we reify and solidify and make something as something real and unchanging is ourselves. We think of ourselves as something enduring, essentially unchanging, that there is a me at the core of everything. And so things happen to me. And this idea of an enduring I, which makes me who I am, and around which, like a constellation of memories, identities, gender, profession, family, race, nationality, all our memories, all our experiences, all of this concretize me, enduring, everlasting me, is regarded by the Buddha as our fundamental unknowing, our fundamental ignorance, and the cause of all our suffering. So this is why the Buddha felt that his Dharma was too subtle for people to understand. The Buddha talks a lot about dukkha, about impermanence, and people can understand that. They look at their lives, they can see, yes, there is this underlying dis-ease running through our lives. Yes, if we look at it, everything really is impermanent. And of course, modern science has shown how much, even at a cellular level, everything is flowing. It's not static the way it appears to be. And we can see also our body is indeed changing, and all the cells are changing. And of course, if we start to look at our mind, we see how moment to moment to moment, it's all a flow. The thoughts are changing momentarily. Even as we say it, they've gone, and new ones are coming. And we can all, if we look, we can understand that. But the idea that nonetheless there is not an enduring spectator behind it all, that is very difficult to realize. Because we had this very deep, fundamental feeling of I. And we don't recognize that as ego. And that's the cause of our problems. That is the cause of the dukkha. The dukkha is not self-existence from its own side. It depends on causes and conditions. And the main cause is our sense of I. Now, when the Buddha said there is no I, there is no self, an-atma, doesn't mean we don't exist. To say that nothing exists would be nihilism. To say that everything endures, or a core endures, is eternalism. And the Buddha taught the middle way. So when we come to the third noble truth, the cessation of dukkha, we would deal with that. What exists when the ego dissolves? Good news. Don't be worried. But this ego, I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever read Eckhart Tolle? Yeah? He's very good in expounding the problems of living within an ego consciousness. Of course, he has been steeped in Buddhist, Hindu, Sufi thought and Christian mysticism. He hasn't just come out from nowhere, and his own inner experience. I mean, as people like Eckhart Tolle and others like this are very good at explaining, and Krishnamurti and all these people are very, very good at explaining the level of consciousness beyond the ego, but they don't give you a path how to get there. The beauty of the Buddha was that he didn't just say, right, there's the top of the mountain, this is what it looks like with a 360-degree view. He gave tools and training for climbing that mountain. So, but their explanations, if anyone's read like Krishnamurti or Tolle, etc., are very beautiful, clear explanations of that level, how one can live in total open presence without the ego. It's not that one ceases to exist. It's not at all that one ends up as a kind of cosmic blob. I mean, it's described as waking up from the dream of ignorance. So the cause of our dukkha lies within us. It's not that we have to carpet the world in order not to walk on stones and thorns. We just have to put some leather beneath our feet, our own feet, and then we can walk anywhere. So the problem is not out there. Problem is inside ourselves. And this is due to our clinging mind. Psychologically, anything which is received through the sense doors, that means eyes, ears, nose, taste, touch, or our mental door, the thinking, as this input is hits the sense door and is picked up by the consciousness connected with that sense door, eye consciousness, ear consciousness, and so forth, automatically there is a response, there is a sensation, which is basically like, dislike, indifferent. So everything which we see or hear, taste, touch, think, has this ripple of response, pleasure, pain, or indifference. Now, because we are receiving so much input the whole time, normally it just goes through. But if it's the sensation is strong enough, then it goes on to the next level of our reaction to that. So if something is pleasant, the mind reaches out to grasp it. If it is something unpleasant, then we reject it. We get annoyed, irritated, don't like that. Or if it is nothing, it's indifferent, then we just ignore it. We're not very interested. The mind has a dull reaction. So constantly, we are responding with a response of pleasure, pain, or indifference to everything which is flooding through our senses. And because we're not normally aware of that, if the input is strong enough, then it is plugging in to our negative emotions, of greed or anger or dullness. Automatically. So we see something which gives us pleasure and we reach out and we want to grasp it, we want to possess it. Or we see something which displeases us and then we reject it and we don't like it and we get upset and angry or whatever. Or we get jealous because someone else has something I want. Or we have many things and then we feel very pleased with ourselves. We feel very proud of ourselves because we have all these pleasure-giving things. And so constantly we are feeding the negativities in our mind, which are called in Sanskrit klesha, which means something which in English they're translated sometimes as afflictive emotions. Our greed, our anger, our pride and jealousy and all these things, the mind is stirred up. And if the mind is in a state where it's angry or it's jealous or it's greedy and craving and longing, then it is not a peaceful, happy mind. It is in dukkha. So the main problem is the clinging mind. Either we cling to what is pleasurable or the clinging turns into rejection of what is unpleasurable. And this causes pain in the mind. And from what we are thinking in the mind comes out our speech and our actions, as we will be dealing with later when we're dealing with the path. I mean, all our actions are based on our intentions. And so if our intention is unwholesome, is negative, unvirtuous, then our speech and actions will likewise issue from that and cause problems to ourselves and to others. I mean, the whole world is in the grip. This is not just academic. The whole world is in the grip of our completely crazy greed and aggression and jealousy and competitiveness and ambition. And we're destroying ourselves, we're destroying our planet, we're destroying all the beings on the planet. This is not just a little thing. Why are we destroying ourselves and each other and the planet? Because of our afflictive emotions. Our greed, our aggression, our jealousy, our pride. I mean, the whole world is in the control of people with totally uncontrolled minds. I mean, it's frightening. And it all comes back to what is the cause of dukkha? The cause of dukkha is this ignorance, this unknowing. Literally it means unknowing. Avidya. Vidya means knowledge. Is negative. This ignorance of our true nature and this grasping at what is not our true nature. In particular, this sense of I. It hasn't gotten better. Einstein, many, many years ago, probably 60 years ago or more, remarked that while there was a great increase in knowledge, there had not been an increase in wisdom. And this is so true. We are very clever, but very stupid. And now we have the power to destroy in a way we never had before. Craving. we think that the most difficult emotion that many people ask how to remove is anger. And so, east or west, one of the most common questions is, I have a very angry temperament, how do I get rid of anger? But the Buddha said, though anger is karmically very heavy, nonetheless, it is relatively easy to remove, because on the whole, we do not like being angry. And so therefore we are, willing to put in some effort for learning loving kindness and compassion and all these other techniques for how to overcome anger. But anger is not the cause of our dukkha. What is the cause of our dukkha is craving. And very few people ask how to overcome greed. Because if we get what we want, then we think that's happiness. You cannot imagine being in the world and not wanting something. We enjoy our craving on a, relative level. And so most people are not so concerned about how to deal with craving. But the Buddha said craving is very difficult to remove. When I lived in Lahul, outside my cave there was like a kind of little terrace, sort of like this, this is my cave. Then here was this earth, and then it went down, and I had a little garden. And so this here was made of baked earth. But when it rained or after the snow melted, then it became thick mud. So I thought I should really lay some flat stones, and then it won't hurt if it rains. It will dry. So I clumped all these heavy, big stones to lay a kind of stone patio. But in the meantime, there were, from time to time, little clusters of little pink flowers with yellow centers. So sweet. There one, there one, there one, there one. But because they all came up in a little kind of cluster, I thought, well, I have to get rid of them first, because otherwise, it will be wonky on the stones. So I'll pull them up. So I pulled, and they weren't coming up. So I got a pickaxe and I started digging down to find out what was the problem. In the end, I dug up the whole of the terrace, and underneath there was this network of roots connecting all these little clumps. Some of them that thick, the root. This whole network underneath of root system. And all you saw was just these little, sweet little pink flowers with little yellow centers. And I thought, that is like craving. It looks so innocent, so sweet. But psychologically, underneath these thick, deep roots, throughout our whole psychological framework, so difficult to uproot. The desire. The word desire in English is ambiguous. In Oriental languages, there are different words for different desires, like love, I love ice cream, I love my mother. So sometimes English is quite impoverished. But in Oriental languages, they're very specific. They have different words for different emotions. And one of these is desire. There is the desire for enlightenment. There is the desire to benefit all beings. There is the desire to walk the path. There is a desire... This is a different word. to the word desire in the sense of wanting to get what the ego wants. And this grasping, that is the clinging, grasping mind that desires its own pleasure, is a different word from desire for higher spiritual things. It's not, but in English we have the same word, so it's difficult. People say, but isn't the desire for liberation a good thing? It's a different word. So this desire, this grasping, clinging desire is the problem, which causes our dukkha. Because we don't get what we do want, and we do get what we don't want. And then we suffer. The ego suffers. There is also this example for grasping of said to be this monkey trap in Indonesia, which is a hollowed out coconut. And they make a little hole. They nail it to a tree. And then they make a little hole in it. And inside the hollowed out coconut, they put some coconut sweet, which smells very nice. And so then a monkey comes. He smells this sweet, puts his hand in, grasps the sweet. Now he has a fist. And it can't get out the hole. And so then the hunters come and pick up the monkey. Now all the monkey has to do is let go. But his mind wants the sweet as well as to escape. And so his fear and his grasping, he cannot let go. And so he's captured. That's very, very clear indication of our problem. Yeah, we want to be liberated, but we don't want to let anything go.